Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of the Daily Friend Show Live. I am Nicholas Lorimer, today joined by Mr. Herman Pretorius. Herman, down here in Cape Town, it is a bit of a cold, slightly rainy, windy day, just the kind of day I like. How are you?
Yeah, we've had our fair share of chill here in the Republic of Pretoria. And what was fun is that the coldest day of the year we had a power cut.
Oh,
Um,
wonderful.
so I mean, very atmospheric. It was raining outside. It was chilly. It was cold. You practically felt Dickensian as you sat
Yes.
there, sort of by the crackling fire, until you realized
It,
that as cozy as a fire is, it doesn't substitute really for a geyser, and that put a slight sort of dampener on the whole vibe. But no, today we're seeing some sun, and I think we're past the worst of the cold. But it's always this annoying thing that they say, "Oh, Gauteng, it's going to be, it's going to be snow weather," and it's like, snow, and then you watch outside and it's just sludge. So I mean,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
it's fine. I'm fine. I'm fine. We're fine.
South African weather is generally, I think, regarded by most people in the world to be pretty good, but our lack
Yeah.
of snow, I think, is a major drawback. I mean, I know there is snow in some parts of the country, but it's quite rare, and it
But
is a bit of a shame.
I just want to add something that about the weather and climate. Two weeks ago, when Makone, our colleague, and I went to Accra for the
In
Atlas Liberty
Ghana, yeah.
Forum, it was the first time in my life that I sort of had to go inside a building because outside it was too stuffy. I just wasn't ready for the tropical humidity, the sort of
Yeah, the tropics are
no, it was
something different. When you step off the
yeah, it
plane and you
was
get hit with that sort of like,
no, yeah. So no, I'll never complain about the South African climate again.
indeed. All right, well, enough small talk. Let's get into what we're going to talk about today. And
The
today we're not
medium
actually going to
talk.
start.
Let's get
Yes, and
into the medium.
we're gonna upgrade to medium talk here. We we're not going to start off with news per se. We're going to start off with a rather strange video. Now, there's no sound on this one, but I'll describe it to audio only listeners. So this is a video of a man who is up a it's one of those cell phone poles that's meant to look like a tree, and he's constructed like a sort of a shack or a tree house on top of it, and he's just sort of sitting in this rather ramshackle, dangerous looking structure. Seems to just be kind of minding his own business, doing something up there. And this is obviously quite a striking image. It caught a lot of people's attention, and I came across this post on social media, which says the fentanyl homeless have mutated into the super fentanyl homeless, and then attaches that video, which I put underneath there. And what's interesting about this is very much framing it as being from the United States. And indeed, many of the comments took it to mean that, right? You've got a commenter here saying, every year the United States becomes more dystopian. Someone else speculating that this has got to be San Bernardino or some other inland California hellhole. Now, normally I wouldn't pay much attention to this, but I had actually seen this clip being reported just a few days before in South African media. And excuse me a second while I just find the particulars of the story. Here it is. This, in fact, is not from the United States. This is a man named Emmanuel Dube who lives in Durban. And he built this shack in this sort of tree structure thingy, whatever it is, across from his own home. He made it from boards and branches and fabric, and he spends most of his time there, sometimes sleeping in it. Basically, he's unemployed. He's got drug problems, and recently his parents and brothers passed away, and basically this is where he says he goes to just get away from all of it and the difficulties in his life. He says, I sit here for peace. It's the only way to leave everything down there and find peace. And the reason this struck me was because this is a South African video about something in South Africa that is tragically far more common than we would like it to be. You know, someone unemployed, living on drugs, and, you know, who clearly has some talent and ability if he's able to build structures in the sky like this. And yet it's being framed just by simply shoring off the context. No fancy AI models, no fake videos, anything like that. You just shore the context off from a clip, you post it. The original clip has 7 million views on Twitter, and the guy who posted it is monetized, so it means he probably made a lot of money from that. And it really got me thinking, Herman, about just how fake so much of social media really is. This is something I've been banging on about for a bit, but I think we all in our minds have this kind of idea that, you know, there's a lot of fake stuff on social media. But it's just difficult, I think, to get, especially now with how many bots and how good bots are online, with just how much of social media content is entirely misleading, fake, manufactured. What's your take on all this?
Yeah, so when you mentioned this to me, it sort of chimed with the election campaign we're currently in, where it really is the ideal moment for content to mean whatever you want it to mean. Objectively speaking, the city of Cape Town is the best run metro in the country. And of course, the severe challenges that city faces in terms of its spatial layout. I mean, the rather substantial inconvenience of having a mountain plonked right down in the middle of it. The magnet it has become for socioeconomic, you know, semigrants or semi-refugees, whatever the appropriate term is, that won't get me slaughtered and cancelled. So then you deal with the fact that Khayelitsha, Langa, Philippi, these are poverty-stricken places in one of the richest cities in Africa, in the best governed city in the country. But it hasn't stopped the DA's political opponents from finding failures, clear failures of infrastructure and delivery, and then just snapshotting that, taking it and playing the game of equivalence. That, you see this in Joburg, well, they've got this in Cape Town. You see this in Cape Town, this good thing, but they've also they hide this. They don't want to show you the truth, the real stuff. And it just struck me how the context of whatever we are shown changes entirely. But not just that, worse than that, the willingness to investigate the context is almost the more critical thing that is lacking, because the assumption that, okay, yeah, this is clearly a California thing, this is sort of the dystopian fentanyl stuff, there isn't even a willingness to go, hang on, is that where I think California. It is? So yes, you immediately go from information to conclusion, skipping the step in between of information becoming knowledge and knowledge becoming the basis for a conclusion.
I don't think that's even necessarily sort of maliciousness or any kind of failure on the part of the person reading it. It's just because, as we were talking about before the show, there's so much information being blasted at you on social media. Like when you go through a sort of a doom scroll, as the kids call it, on social media, and you're just like post, your brain is having to switch sort of contexts and opinions and thoughts and things so quickly that you don't really have time to actually think on the next level. It just kind of It like via osmosis just sort of goes into your brain, and then it just kind of gets stuck there. I remember, whenever I see something on social media, it just sort of it'll get lodged in the back of my mind, and I'll recall it later, but I don't know where it came from, or if it was true or what the context was, and I think, hang on a second, is this actually correct? And I think this is not particularly good for the body politic.
No, and I'm not a naysayer or a Luddite, nor am I an optimist or a pessimist. I think that sort of bypasses critical faculties. But when it comes to things like AI and social media, I'm very much in favor of them. I think the like all developments of science and biology and technology, they really are what we make of them. And I think, I'd rather have a situation with the current technologies we have and the ability to find. I always say that with the internet and the massive escalation of AI sophistication, we've got the knowledge of the world at our fingertips. Really, it is an astonishing time to be alive, and I say that with not a hint of sarcasm or being sardonic. That said, I do miss the simplicity of the social media feed ordered by chronology and proximity. That yeah. I genuinely miss the time when the most recent thing that someone on my friends list posted was the most recent thing that I saw, because that allowed me to always ground what I was seeing relative to the context where I was in time. Now I see something like, and it says like 28 May in some sort of off-white font, just somewhere related to the post, just clear enough so that some box can be ticked. So I do think the algorithmic gamification and the idea of, you like this, we'll show you more of this, has
it has the sort of creation of social media. It went from being sort of, I don't know really what to call it, it was kind of like an address and photo book with a classified section and a notice board, and with it combined with the occasional scroll on a bathroom wall, I guess. And it's now turned into something more akin to a drug or a slot machine. And I think that's why it seems to be to have such a negative effect on so many people.
And it's that confirmation of what you think you already know. And look, fair play to Facebook and X and the social media giants. They want people to stay on their site longer. I'm not going to critique them for that. That's probably what I would do if I were in the issues as well. But I am slightly depressed about where we are, but not depressed about, I think, where we are going, frankly, because, and this is where I think AI might genuinely be the saving grace of social media. We are, I think, as a species, if that is not too grandiose a term, going to become incredibly suspicious of whatever we see on a screen. And I think that's a very good thing. I mean, if we just look at how far AI has come in the last 3 years in terms of generating visuals, occasionally you, of course, see the toe number 77 or, arm number 4.
That slightly uncanny way that people move, even in very realistic AI videos, where it's just slightly off and your mind can detect it.
We are still seeing sort of these artifacts and these giveaways, but it is going to get better and better. And we are already at a point where it's very, very easy to confuse what you're seeing with real life. And generally speaking, I think the response to that will be just an overall suspicion of screen time, which I don't think will necessarily be bad for the world. I think we're heading now into a century where, ironically, the performing arts, everything that happens person to person will almost have a premium put on it, because it will have this label of it's something you can see, you can trust, you're not being bullshitted. Because if human beings really hate one thing, it is to be taken advantage of. So in a weird way, I think the curiosity that has been lacking for the last 20 or 30 years of, the internet, of I'm seeing it and, I should believe my lying eyes, has become a fascinating, it has come into a fascinating collision with AI, where I think we're going to seriously reinvestigate educationally what we mean by assess academically, but also what we mean by assess in terms of truth and integrity. And I always think about the politician who already can now be relatively accurately replicated in a video saying something quite horrendous and quite awful. I seem to remember a while ago there was a clip about Glynis Breitenbach doing the rounds, and it was clearly fake, but it just brought to me the rather comforting but also intimidating fact that politicians are going to have to be much more knowable, so that when something like an insane version of them, comes out saying something quite terrible, they would need their reputation to stand in for the critical judgment that might previously have protected them. So it's going to force a lot of
for all media. It's not just politicians. I think news media, YouTube shows like this, it's all going to be far more reputation based than has been up till now.
Yeah, and perhaps that's a good thing. But I do think hopefully what comes out of that is that there's an inbuilt suspicion of information and an inbuilt curiosity of context. Because I mean, my team and I, the What SA Can Be team, we were actually talking about this yesterday. We had this figure in one of our graphics where we said 42% of households in South Africa are women-led. 42%. And we actually had a very, very long discussion about, is how should we present that fact? Because 42% could be a minority if the other side of that scale is okay, 58% of households in South Africa are not women-led. But the moment you understand that there are 4, 5, 6, 7 categories of what it means for a household to be led, it could be both parents, male-led, child-led, then you start appreciating that the number 42% is actually quite substantial. It's when, if the two of us go for lunch and I pay for 42% of the bill, is actually quite a small portion I'm contributing. But if there are 8 of us and I pay 42% of the bill, that's actually quite a massive contribution I'm making. So context really is everything. And I genuinely hope that the suspicion that will come over the next decade, 2 decades, of whatever we see on a screen will build into it this sort of, hang on, but what's the context question? If not, I don't think humanity is going to be much worse off than it already is. But it might really just be an opportunity to perhaps rediscover some critical faculties that the wonderful advantages of the end of history has afforded us.
Indeed. I see, Herman, you're being complimented on adding your books to the shot on YouTube. So before we get to the news, which we're going to talk about a little bit, I just want to say we've just launched a new WhatsApp channel. Some people may not know of this. Some people may use them already, but WhatsApp has this relatively new feature where you can follow channels, which is basically just sort of WhatsApp feed where no one talks. You just the admins can just post links there essentially, and it's a great place to find news and that sort of thing. The Daily Friend now has one, so we'll put a link to that in the description below. Do check us out there. It's probably the best place to get quick and easy access to all of the diverse opinions we publish and Daily Friend show as well. Okay, let us go on to the more newsy things. It was last weekend, I believe, on Saturday, that the DA launched its local government manifesto. And we'll talk a little bit about the sort of outline of what was in that manifesto, but it also came with a lot of theatrics, and the most notable of that was probably Helen Ziller donning her sort of DJ persona that she has created during this campaign, which was quite a sight to behold. So I'll just skip through various bits of that video, but here is Helen Ziller, the DJ. And so for those listening at home, this is Helen Ziller coming out from behind the scenes wearing boxing gloves and like a hoodie, and then taking it off and joining the DJ at the DJ podium, clapping along. The stage the DA set up has dancers performing, with sort of flaming things twirling around them and people break dancing, and it's really quite a spectacle. Now, you may be tempted to sort of go, it's all just theatrics. This is just bread and circuses stuff. But I think it hits a little bit different when it's the DA that manages to pull off something like this, because they're not typically associated with this kind of, pageantry. They're sort of thought of as too boring and middle class, I think, in a lot of people's minds. So this is clearly, I think, an attempt to kind of shift the image of the DA a little bit to being something a little bit more kind of populist and fun, which I think has worked well with what Ziller's campaign has put out so far. Herman, your thoughts on this, and then we'll get into the manifesto itself.
So, yeah, I see we have a comment. Helen is quite the lively one, lol. That was exactly my first thought. When I saw this, I was like, that is a level of energy. I'm Helen, and I'm not sure if you'll appreciate me saying this, but she's more than twice my age. And she has a level of pizzazz and chutzpah and energy that that I simply feel I don't quite have. I mean, just to put this in context, when I got an injury the other day watching rugby, not even playing it. It's I don't know if that's something that happens once you turn 35. But
yeah, I mean, I completely shattered my elbow just from carrying a laundry basket. Like it. Clearly, we're not taking the right supplements. We need to find out what Helen is taking.
So the first thing is, Helen is good grief. That's why I always sort of find it funny when they try to play the age card against her, because I'm like, dude, you have no idea. You have no idea that Ellen could give Madupi a run for its money in terms of power output. This the second thing that now sort of registered with me when I saw the scantily clad flaming women. That phrase came out entirely.
Those watching the video will know what you meant.
Yes, and those not watching, well, good luck. It reminded me, ironically, so much of how human beings really are a consistent lot. In the 1874 election, I mean that election that's on everyone's lips. I know it's sort of this hot topic, and all.
No, I think about it often.
And kids and chin wagging about it. But I read a little account where, I mean, Nick, come on, don't let me break down in my own caricature. I saw an account of the election in 1874 in Norwich, where the Conservative Party brought a circus to town, and it just really came to my mind that something that I think politicians used to have until we got all serious with the First and the Second World War and the Cold War, is an appreciation that people are quite plain in the best sense. And this is something that I think the DA has been picking up on, especially because of its very technocratic and very policy and serious in politics reputation.
And particularly, I think Zilla's campaign specifically out of the, I mean, I think this is broader in the party, but I think her campaign with the success of those quite silly social media videos highlighting Joburg's problems has been playing on that. And it's also a great antidote to, I think, the Godzilla image, you know, of Helen Zille as just being this sort of tough, strict, controlling, domineering force. Like, you know, people know that about her already, but this is sort of like, but also she can be something else.
And it all really sort of started, or I at least started seeing it when they chose as the sort of slogan, the hashtag, the message for her campaign as "Believe in Joburg." And I said to her at the time, and I thought it was very, very good, because it's not political. And this is something that sort of politicians and political analysts and junkies and politicos really, you know, appreciate, is that most people, when they hear politics, they really switch off. So if you can get the voter to not go, oh, that's the politician I like, I'll vote for them, to say, that's a person I like, despite the fact that they are a politician. That's the level at which trust is built, at which you go, okay, I'm going to give you a chance here. I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt that I might come to like you. Politics did talk. It's a serious business, make no mistake. But it did start taking itself incredibly seriously by assuming, and we liberals are particularly guilty of this, that human beings are these sort of cost-benefit calculators on two legs. We're not. We're quite sentimental, emotional, weird, idiosyncratic creatures. And that's why my theory of an election campaign basically comes down to it as two pillars. Do you have the ability to outbid your opponents for public airtime? And do you have the ability to make credible promises? And I think that's where it works for the Zille campaign, because I think her reputation and her track record allows her to cover the second pillar of, I have the ability and the credibility to make these promises. But it would have been very much a struggle if it was just this Einstein-Germanic approach to, diagnosis, cure, diagnosis, cure. You do need a human-based buy-in, especially in this time where information and solutions are just so easy to come by. The whole idea of, for example, store layout around the world has changed, hotel layout. Everything has become quite, and this is partly due to social media. Again, it's a good, to the extent that we allow it to be, is you have to create moments of connection and rather than conviction, that you have to have in your restaurant, have a little corner where there's a little gimmick, where someone can snap a selfie or can say, I saw the golden pineapple, or whatever the case may be, is that little gimmick of linking on a personal level by going, yes, that, and based on that recommendation, based on that connection, you can then go further and either sell a policy or a dish. And the DA, I think, has been best at recognizing this, because it has been stunning in its absence with a party brand for, I think, too long. That you really need to get past the point of thinking that that winning an argument is the same as winning an election, or winning a debate is the same as winning a vote. It genuinely isn't. And I think it's, all strength to all, luck to her. I would not have done it. Perhaps it says more about me than it does about her. I don't have the self. I'm not as comfortable in perhaps in my skin as Helen Zille is. But if you want to look at a politician who does this sort of thing, but does it badly, I think, without the buttressing of, the Godzilla image, go look at Ed Davey, the leader of the Liberal Democrats in the UK. who has essentially become a stand-up slapstick comedy show where instead of a policy announcement, he just donors off a kayak. He just doesn't come with a sort of seriousness that would allow him to play to the levity. And the last thing I would say, sorry, I'm going on very long about this. The last thing I would say to, and I know the Zilla campaign knows this, is that be careful of confusing attention with investment. That you are getting attention, you are getting those clips, you are getting sort of the virality you're looking for. But don't think that that means you've got the votes. A view shouldn't be considered a vote. People are now tuning in. We're 82 days away from the election. The brands, the reputations have been shaped. Now it is really going to be a question as to whether you can move beyond grabbing attention and actually start handing out the free samples of what a government under your leadership would be. And how do I know the Zilla campaign knows that? Well, that would explain for you those 10 buckies that have started fleeting about, handing out free samples of service delivery, essentially showing that Zilla is serious about this, that this isn't just a sort of a suitor going, marry me and you'll find out how wonderful I am. This is, you have to pay for the meal, give the flowers. And I think that's the sort of investment that usually was absent from a technocratic liberal party.
Yeah. So let's get into the manifesto, which was described by Carol Payton as boring, which, I don't know. It depends what gets one's motor going, I guess. But anyway, comments pointing out that Ivo Effector has on the Daily Friend, and you can read it there, written a little bit more of an in-depth analysis of the DA's manifesto. We'll just do a little bit of our own sort of surface level one here. There's sort of 6 major themes the DA wanted to put in their manifesto. They say they want to build corruption-free and professional municipalities, and here this is clearly about meritocracy and not and being against cadre deployment. They say they want to ring fence water revenue so that it can be reinvested into infrastructure, and also they want to bring in private sector investment and expertise. Same for electricity, where they want to free municipalities to buy and sell their own power and reinvest in electricity revenue as well, so ring fencing water and electricity revenue. On crime, which is not really a local government issue in a lot of ways, the DA still, I think, felt like it needed to make a promise. So their section here is called Making Communities Safer. And they say that they want to bring policing closer to the people and empower municipalities with tools to fight crime on the ground. We've seen this recently in Cape Town, with the DA announcing that it wants to start essentially a detective branch of the Metro cops in Cape Town. They say they want to do a program of, they've previously run Adopt a School, but now they want to run a sort of Adopt a Park or Adopt a Public Space, where private sector organizations which are trying to achieve their, the governance goals, those environmental, social governance goals that a lot of bigger companies have, can adopt a public space and restore it to make it sort of clean and look nice. And they say they also want to cut red tape, enable all informal traders to operate legally, and connect residents to jobs through reliable infrastructure and public transport. So, as Ivor kind of was saying in his piece, a lot of basics and nothing that makes you go, wow, that's incredible. But a lot to be said for basics in a country that doesn't do them very well. And in fact, I from what I've read of it so far, I'm pretty enthusiastic about some of these things. Herman, what do you make of this? I guess it's a little bit difficult to design a manifesto that, is essentially, because our local government elections is a whole range of of elections taking place at the same time. So you can't get too specific in a lot of ways. You have to make these more sort of general promises, and that I think also dilutes things a bit. But what do you make of this manifesto?
Yeah, so I was speaking to a high up DA person the day before yesterday, and we both agreed that one shouldn't misunderstand what a manifesto is and what it is. Firstly, anyone who believes a manifesto is a vote winner, I think, is guilty of misjudging the human capacity to absorb information and make decisions based on that. I'm yet to encounter a significant amount of South Africans, either personally or in the data, who are swung by that manifesto. Really, I mean, it let me, my heart was beating out of my chest. I'm unaware of a manifesto swinging an election. I'm aware of policies swinging an election, but the policies do something downstream from a manifesto, and that is it gets to the values level. People want to vote on a values basis. Do you share my values? Do you care about people like me? So no one goes, or well, not no one, but it very, 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 very few people go. Let me quickly take all the manifestos, read through them, and then make a decision on who I'm going to vote for. So what is the point then of a manifesto? It is almost more an internal document than it is an external document. Yes, it's a contract with the voter. Yes, it is sort of giving a prospectus about what your values are and what you want to do. But it is also making sure that your party is coherent, that it builds an ability to answer questions across the board. That if you ask this person of this party in this part of the country, what's your plan for potholes or for water, and you ask someone else in the same party in a different part of the country, what's your solution to this? They give you a consistency so that you can go, oh, right, there's stability here, there's thought here, there's credibility here. I can give them the benefit of the doubt. So it has that external component, but it's much more internally to go, right, team, this is what we want to do. And I have told people in politics previously that the reason South African politics quite often is stuck in a sort of an amateurish rut is not only the fact that we are a relatively young democracy, it is that our politicians don't love rugby enough, because I think rugby is a very, very good illustration of the difference between strategy and tactics and the manifesto. In rugby, the manifesto is what's the best way of scoring against this team? Are we going to force them into giving penalties away? Are we going to tire them out? So there's sort of the question of the psychological weaknesses of the opponent. Where can we? And that's the manifesto. That's the internal binding factor of making sure that you all know what you want to do when you get onto the field. The reason it's also good with strategy is strategy in rugby is where do you want to play the ball from, and tactics is how do you get it there. And a manifesto is much more a team coherence mechanism than it is a sales prospectus or something to light up the sky as a very more commercial could. That said, I thought what stood out to me from this manifesto is, it's not terribly exciting, but it is clear and it is very practical. It has some vision stuff, and the vision stuff are necessary. But I almost feel like this is a party able to appreciate that they are likely on the cusp of 100 different coalition negotiations going on at the same time, and that those teams of people in those municipalities will need some practical guidance as to what do we want the outcome of these agreements to point to. What are the things that we genuinely believe could make a difference? So to that extent, I was struck by its practicality, and also I was quite struck by its brazenness of being willing to push the Overton window to say we've had a state-centric model of local governance since the inception of this system. It's time to change that. And I think that's an ambitious but possibly accurate reading of the situation. I think South Africans are heartful enough to go, right, I'm
on the
willing
the
to give it a
practicality
try.
thing. There was this sort of interesting section, which I thought was quite an admission of how practical sort of things are. And clearly the expectation that they might end up taking over a municipality that has essentially completely failed. There's a section that says, here's going to be our procedure for reporting ahead of time that the municipality is about to completely collapse and to get local government and national government involved to help rescue it, which if that's truly living in the real world when it comes to governance in so many of South Africa's municipalities, and sort of, you know, describe like, I think like a whole procedure and you know, a dashboard and things like that, the things that consultants really love. But you know, I guess it makes some sense. It's probably better than waiting until it's total collapse before you do these kind of things. And you know, that I think really does speak to the practicality, as you say, of the whole thing. I do see, while you were talking, I went to go and check out the ANC's page, because I didn't think they had launched their manifesto. I thought maybe I'd missed it, and they have actually quite recently put out their manifesto, which appears to just be a huge block of text pasted into a media statement. I'm not sure if they've actually uploaded any sort of document, and they have little bits and pieces as to why the ANC is now credible. They pick out 3 municipalities. Bela has achieved its first clean audit in history. Mbombela has sustained consecutive unqualified outcomes. Enoch Mgijima fully utilized its infrastructure grant in 2024-2025. And then when talking about the overall picture, it lists statistics from the early 2000s as compared, and 90s as compared to today, which, okay, is fair enough, right? The ANC's been in power for that time. But, you know, most people's, I think, most ANC voters' problems with the ANC really stem from, I would say, the last 10 years, more than, you know, compared to 2000. So it's like, yes, you know, electricity access went from 76% in 2002 to 90% today. But the power's off all the time. And also, how much has that number changed in the last 5 years? It's so weak by comparison. But anyway, sorry, I was interrupting.
And it's psychologically quite weak, in the sense that there's a misunderstanding of the ANC. Well, it's actually quite general in politics, and this is where politicians really can learn an awful lot from marketing, and then especially, you know, folks like Rory Sutherland or Jonah Berger. I can't remember where I read it, but someone wrote quite brilliantly, voters never vote to say thank you. And I think if political parties can appreciate that sentence and internalize it, there will immediately be an improvement in the quality of campaigning in this country. Because, yes, you will find a correlation between performance in government and success at elections. And the ANC themselves are a testament to this, getting 70% of the vote in 2004 at a time when unemployment was dropping, when access to basic services like housing, electricity, and water was really, you know, making big strides, when the economy was growing at 3, 4, 5% per year. So you do get the 2004 election of 7 in 10 voters endorsing this party. Now, that might be misconstrued as a thank you vote. It's going well, thank you. But it isn't. It is a, I see what you're doing, I sort of like it, I want more. A vote is always a demand for more. And if you are going to rely on successes in the distant past, you are actually just reinforcing the fact that you haven't recently been on a delivery trajectory. So it might actually be a damaging thing of saying, oh, you know, we really delivered this. That's why the ANC's nostalgia bait really no longer cuts it, because it just sort of reinforces this idea that, oh, but you haven't done it recently for us. So the political parties have a lot to learn in terms of understanding that voters really never vote to say thank you. And I think what's good about this manifesto is it's not asking voters to vote to give a vote of thanks.
In the media statement on the ANC's manifesto, by the way, in reference to the city of Johannesburg, it appears once. It says, the city of Johannesburg, as a strategic economic center, continues to receive dedicated attention.
Well, thank goodness. I was worried there for a moment, but now, oh well, it's and you know, the amazing thing about the ANC is how good and bad it can be at the same time. It is a party that spent 70 years building up social capital, being AfriForum before AfriForum was AfriForum. And now we're in the 21st century, and yet they still behave as if politics can operate on, you know, mid 20th century, late 20th century rules. So no, it is a fascinating study. I mean, and all these parties have their weaknesses. I'm not saying, oh, the ANC is crap. They are quite crap, but you know, all parties have their crapness. For the IFP, it is their absolute DNA of traditional Zulu hierarchical decision making. If you ever want to understand why the IFP can't move at the speed of a dead snail, and make the sort of the continental drift feel like bullet time, it is because traditionally in the hierarchies of the upper ranks and houses of Zulu culture, decision making is incredibly slow, incredibly laborious, and incredibly inclusive process. That's why Velonkosi Hlabisa was identified to succeed Buthelezi about 5 years before he actually did. For the DA, the problem is its technocratic ability to keep on reminding voters that it can deliver, but not for the ordinary South African. That's the threat to their message. Is if they go on to say, we did so well in Cape Town, most people will go, I'm not in Cape Town. So it does risk this idea of this exclusivity of you're good, you're competent, but not really for everyone. And then you've got, you know, MK. So all of these parties have their things, but I think perhaps that's sort of my underlying takeaway, is this is the first real political election, I think, in South African history, truly, to really show politics in the South African sense. It's competitive, it's high stakes, and it's taking place in the stunning absence of a dominant party.
Yes. No, I think that's very well said. One, as a way of closing off today's episode, I just want to read one more little segment from this ANC media statement on its manifesto, highlighting successes in more recent years. A concerted effort to stabilize and improve metropolitan performance is evidenced by the positive results and outcomes achieved in eThekwini as part of the presidential working group, including, are you ready? The 2025 tourism spend being the highest on record, a 93% cumulative revenue collection rate, and all its beaches now being operational.
I mean that if the voters don't go for that, I don't know what they want.
The beaches are now operational, Herman. They weren't, but they're back to the state they should be.
Son of a beach. I mean, it is, and but what I like is sort of that's the greatest hits. That's what I call policy delivery volume 55 or wherever we might be. We're spending money on tourism. Not mind you, we're not yet at the getting money and the earning money stage, but boy, are we spending. We're taking your money at an exceptionally capable rate, and the beaches, they are open.
No longer
Greatest
flooded with
hits.
sewage as they were a few years ago. Just reminding everyone
Yes,
of that.
we got our shit together, and it's now mostly there. No, it is frankly amazing how it works. And that's the last point from my side. I see the comment that any voter who still do not realize that the ANC, EFF, MKP, and Action AA are useless must be retarded or completely brain dead. Be careful. Not because you shouldn't offend people and by calling them, cognitively less able. Be careful of assuming that the human being across the board is a rational decision maker as much as you might think you are. And the example I always use is the antiperspirant spray I use. I've been using it for 15 years, the same brand. I didn't 15 years ago do a serious study of cost benefit analysis to, body odor versus hormonal attractiveness and ability to sort of get about town with my leather jacket and my can of milk. At one point, one day in Dischem, this can was at the right height, on the right shelf, on the way to the till. We are incredibly idiosyncratic decision makers. And there's a wonderful stat that came out, I can't remember when, but in the last year or so, which found that 13% of South African voters vote for the party they vote for because that was the party of their parents. Now, it's very easy to say, oh, that's a moronic thing to vote for. That's a stupid thing to vote for. Well, it might, in a very weird way, be a way of honoring your parents. Or it might be there are many, many, many reasons for making a decision we make at the polls. And we shouldn't assume that others are less rational than we are because they vote less. If we're going to say that everyone has the right to cast a vote, then everyone has the right to have a stupid reason for casting that vote. But if you're interested in changing that, you have to give a better stupid reason.
Yeah. This makes me often think of, because one of my interests, of course, is US politics. And I'm not sure if it's still the case, but until very recently, the most important thing in being able to determine what party someone was likely to vote for was who their parents voted for in the US. And I think this is almost certainly true in the UK, at least until quite recently, probably since we've had this kind of breakup of the two-party system there. This is a reality, actually, about how democracy works. Doesn't mean democracy is bad. And that's a whole nother discussion for another day about why this is actually not as bad as it seems. But it is, I think, yes, it's an important thing is that, it's very easy to kind of cast aspersions on voters and the public and say, they don't know what they're doing. Well, maybe they don't, but there's actually, the system actually is supposed to work like this. And if politicians manage it in the right way, you can still get pretty good governance.
And a last contribution from my side is it is sometimes frustrating that we are living through the growing pains of a relatively young democracy. But if it makes you feel any better, in the 1874 British election, one candidate, and we should just appreciate that this is within a few decades of the 1832 and 1868 and 1872 reforms, where modern democracy for the first time became a thing. You know, the franchise was being expanded. So it's roughly in the same period of you know, democratic maturity as a country, if I may say. One candidate on one visit to a voting district in that election had the following chucked at him: potatoes, half a brick, a red herring, and a dead cat. Human beings are amazingly consistent.
Yeah. Oh dear. Anyway, and on that cheery note, we'll call it to a close there. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you very much for watching. We hope that you found this interesting. I think we've taken a little bit more of a meandering episode today, but hopefully it was all good. So yeah, do check us out on that WhatsApp channel. The link will be in the description and also in the live chat. And I hope everyone has a wonderful and excellent weekend. We'll see you all next week on Monday. Cheers, everyone.